Hey, good morning, team. It is Tuesday, February 20th. I'm Amy Corr. I'm here with Kevin Van Neck.
Good morning.
And we are excited for another great coffee episode. Today, we want to talk about something that's happening out there, which is a lot of movement with buyers, right? We've got a lot of buyer activity in this market right now. So we really thought we'd have a conversation about what are buyers looking for in their agent right now and how to make sure you are securing your buyers by being that agent. So on that note, I've got my coffee. It's pretty tasty this morning.
I've got
Hope
mine.
yours is good. All right.
Hot.
Grab yours and let's jump into the next episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Amy. It's
Hi.
good to be here.
Yeah.
So
we're back.
We're back. Let's talk about what you said, buyers, right? How can we capture buyers? Because what we're hearing from loan officers and anyone in the mortgage industry is that more people are inquiring.
Yep.
So on our side, what can we do to really enhance knowing what buyers want? What can we do on our side to capture those?
Yeah, well, I think right now, the good thing for all of us as agents is that this market is hard. It's challenging. There's a lot of moving parts, especially for buyers in this market. And so I think, one of the things agents should really be looking at is they're looking for an agent that's confident. That
Absolutely.
is confident in knowing their stuff,
Right.
that is confident in knowing their market, all of the nuances of, what's happening in the market, what deals are sticking, what deals are falling apart. For a buyer, when they are looking to, find a property, who is going to be able to make sure that they can hit success, that they can actually not just put an offer in on a property, but actually, get that home is there. So I think confidence is key. I think the thing, for a lot of agents, sometimes if you're listening, you might say, but I don't feel that confident, right?
Right.
So, some of the things that you can be thinking about is, starting to look every morning at, your market data and what's happening in the market. I think that's a really important way that as agents, we can start building that confidence, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing that I think really exudes confidence for agents is being able to share stories. Right? When you are
Absolutely.
talking with a client and you're saying, look, I just worked with a buyer in a very similar situation to yours, and here's what we did.
Yes.
Right? When you can relate a story of someone who already worked with you as an agent and you created success, that's going to build confidence that you know what you're doing. So
Yeah.
I think confidence is really key for buyers in this market.
I love that. And I think that, last week we had Jeremy Collette from Guaranteed Rate on. And one of the things we talked about was, to what you're saying, confidence. You have to understand what's happening in the market because the number one question that people ask is what?
Why should I work with you?
Yeah. And then if we don't feel confident when we're answering that, or they ask a specific question that we can't answer, it's visible, right?
Yeah.
So confidence. No one wants to work with I don't know what the opposite of confidence
Somebody who's
is.
not confident.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
I think another thing when they look for in a buyer's agent is communication, right? And I think this is a rule where there's rarely too much communication, right? So I think from the very first beginning of a relationship with a buyer is telling them what your communication plan is, how you communicate not only with them, but also with colleagues.
Right.
We know there's an inventory issue, right? So how are they going to feel confident in you that you will communicate to get them to where they want to go? And I think it goes beyond how many times have we heard, my clients don't want phone calls.
Mm-hmm. I think the phone is the fastest way to get to anything. And
Yes.
I just think, God, pick up the phone, because the other thing too is you can hear the inflection of a
Right.
person's voice on the other
Yes.
end, and you can hear panic in your buyer's voice that you may get a missed signal if it's a text or an email. I just think picking up the phone is important when you're working with your client, but it's also really important when you're working with other agents.
100%.
Get direct to it. This market is moving too fast that a text or an email might miss it.
Right. And whether it's negotiations or it's looking for inventory or whatever it might be, a text is easy to ignore. My one suggestion is I feel like it is universal that most people don't like voicemails, but don't hesitate to pick up the phone and call and actually have that conversation. Any critical conversation is going to be more successful when it is a voice-to-voice.
Agreed. And kind of to go off of that communication and kind of having a communication plan. I think it's important for a client to really understand how often they're going to hear from you, how they're going to hear from you, why it matters that they hear from you.
Yeah.
But I think that even goes to something bigger, which is in general, you have to have a game plan.
Right.
They are looking at you as the expert, as the agent who they are kind of entrusting to create success for them, right? And so you have to have the game plan. And, it goes down to like, here's an example. Let's say you've got a buyer that is in a $500,000 to $700,000 price point. We know that those markets right now are really tight.
Yeah.
They need to understand, what is your game plan? What are you going to do? And a lot of times you want to lay out that game plan before you even get them in the car. Right? When you start unraveling your game plan midway through the process with them, it's too late. So it's, what is your game plan? How are you going to be creating success for them? And that really starts with like a 30-minute consult with a buyer. I encourage every agent out there, do not get them in your car before you really have an opportunity to have a plan laid out, and you talk to them about things like, their financing strategy, right? How high can they really go in their price point?
Yes.
What are some of their non-negotiables, right? Knowing all of that so that you can then say, okay, guys, based off of this, here's the game plan. Here's how we're going to approach that.
100%.
It makes you look organized. It makes you look like you've done this before.
Not
It
your first
exudes
rodeo.
confidence, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you don't have a game plan, and to me, if you're working with buyers, regardless of price point, your game plan should kind of be the same. There's certain nuances based off of the market, but you should have a strategy. What do you do for buyers when you sit them down and make sure that you've got this great approach? So I just think, we tend to do that for sellers a little bit more naturally, but what is your game plan? How are you going to create success for them? And can you articulate that really easily for them? I think that's important.
I love that. And that's what ties into, for those of you that are ninjas, the big thing is having a process, right? That framework that you can adjust, but you have to have it for buyers too. We do it a lot with listings because it's easy. Schedule photos, schedule the tour, do all these things.
It's like, talk about the cream puff before you walk through the cream puff, right?
right.
And if
Yes.
you don't know what I mean, then you will when you take the ninja installation, right?
Highly recommended.
Yes.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
So I think let's wrap it up with one last one, which I think is the probably number one issue that agents have, that consumers are concerned about, is they can't find what they're looking for because of inventory.
Yep.
So as buyers agents, we have to be able to communicate how, and we actually, speaking of process, have to have a plan or process on how we uncover inventory.
Right.
And so we see it happen a couple of different ways, but I think the number one way to set yourself up to learn about what's coming on the market are your relationships with your colleagues.
Agreed.
Right? Because if all you're doing to find out what's happening in the market and what listings are coming on is you're sending out this blast email to 500 agents saying you've got a buyer, you might find someone. But if you start reaching out individually to agents, control the market share, control the listings, and you have a great relationship with them, and those people actually want to work with you, you're more than likely to find what you're looking for those
Agreed.
clients.
Yeah, and don't make a listing agent do your job for you, right?
Right.
So you send out this, I hear it so often.
Yes.
I sent out a blast email asking people about their pockets or, kind of what they have coming on the market. And I can't believe that Susie Smith didn't call me to tell me about her property at 123 Main Street, and now she has it under contract. Right. It's not her job to follow up on your blast email,
Let
right?
me know if you have a listing.
That's
not going to
do
work.
your job, go that extra mile, take those extra steps to make kind of that one-on-one contact. You know, I think that's your job. That's part of what we do as agents. So I love that. But, inventory is a big issue. So it's kind of going after that inventory.
And learn how to put yourself in positions where you can learn about the inventory. So at industry events, whether it's with your local association or within your company, go to the office if that's where people are gathering. Put yourself in situations to learn through conversation what's happening rather than sitting at home or in your car.
Well, I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's like, don't be by yourself. If you are by yourself most days and most times, that is not the best way to get and grow and build business. So be around people, be in tune with the market, be in front of your colleagues, all of that. That's how you're going to create success. So, well, we hope you thought some of these tips were helpful. We know it is moving out there and the market is busy. So go out there, create some great success for your buyers.
That's right.
And remember, thanks for joining us this Tuesday. But until we see you next time, remember, you've got this.
You got this. Cheers, me.
Cheers.
Cheers.